Hi everyone. I'm a day behind again. Christmas weekend and all that stuff, so that's why I ended up being a day behind. Monday, I was tired. I mean, you got like Saturday was Christmas. I got up super early on Christmas. And then Saturday night we went to my boyfriend's sister's house and spent the night over there, and we were just exhausted Saturday night. And then Sunday we had a Christmas party with them and everything. And then so now Monday I was like, I don't want to do anything, and I just sat around and just tried to recuperate. So last week I ended up reading 3 books. So one of them is a novella. So the first one was A Miracle on Ladies Mile. This is by Joanna Shupe. I thought I would read something that was more of a novella, and I figured, I do have, let's see, one, two, maybe like 4 or 5 Joanna Shupe books. I really need to get into them. I know one person, I think it's Crystal's Bookish Life. She had said she kind of has like a love-hate relationship when it comes to Joanna Shupe's books. She either really loves them or she doesn't really care for them. So I think it might be the same with me, where I might be like, I like this one, I don't like this one. There was a Joanna Shupe novella I read maybe last year or so. It was in an anthology, and I didn't care for it. I did not like it. But for this one here, I did like it. So I think it depends. It depends on the book. So this one here, we have the characters. I gave this one 4 stars. So I gave the characters are Grace and Alex. So I gave this 3 chili peppers out of 5 for the spice rating. I said this was a cute Christmas novella. So I said Grace is 19 and living in a boarding house with other ladies, and she works for a big department store as the window dresser in New York. This is when, obviously during that time, businesses were really kind of like department stores and everything were really trying to sell and all that stuff. And, and it's not like that today. Today it's very much like online sales and different things like that. But during the time of like years ago, you walked down the street, you looked at like these big old like windows that displayed like the department stores products, and it will entice you to like go into the store, if you could afford it, that is, so she's obviously working as a window dresser, and Alex, he's a 30-year-old widower who is part owner of the department store. He's really much self-made. He really kind of worked his way up to being part owner, basically, to this department store. He worked for like another company, and then he met with his partner, and they decided to create this department store together. And so he sees her through like this little scrap through the window. Like she decided to tear off a piece of, like, they try to cover up the window so that way you can't see anything until it's finished. So she went and she tore out a little bit of a section of the window that was papered off, because she just felt like very claustrophobic in it. And I don't blame her. I'm not claustrophobic, but being a little tiny space like that, you can kind of feel a little bit constricted, So she decided to tear off a little bit of the section just for her to feel a little bit better, And so while she's working on this piece that they're going to do, she's the one that came up with this idea for like the fairy tales and all that stuff. And so she goes and she sees this man outside, very, handsome looking man who keeps staring at her. And she's kind of like, okay, whatever. And she's doing her own thing. And she ends up stepping in a puddle. They created this little pond area inside the window. And so she ended up stepping in the puddle. And so she was like, instead of feeling embarrassed, she went and did like a curtsy, and like bowed, like, kind of like, haha, kind of thing, And so he kind of was intrigued by her. And he ends up going into the department store and handing her a towel. And she was like, are you gonna pay for that kind of thing? And so it's kind of like starting of their relationship is he decides to help her with the windows because he sees that she's by herself. So we end up finding out early on he is the part owner, but she doesn't know. She thinks he's just a guy that works, you know, for the department store, you know, working in different departments and all that stuff of the store. And he doesn't tell her until late in the novella that he actually is part owner. So I did feel like he deceived her for too long, and he should have been more upfront with her. I understand his reasoning, you know, where like women see that, you know, he has, you know, a bit of money, things like that. And so women kind of like want to fall at their feet to him, you know. So I can understand his reasoning there. But that was kind of like a little bit of a like, you should have told her a little sooner, dude. You know, you waited a little too late. Also, I felt like he was a widower, so he loved his wife, obviously. You could clearly see in the novel that he loved his wife. He kept thinking about her and like, kind of like not wanting to erase the memory of her, which I can understand. But also, I think his wife would have understood, you know, him being 30 years old. It's like, look, your wife would understand if you decided to move on with your life, especially because he had a 10-year-old daughter. And his 10-year-old daughter was just desperate for attention from him. He ignored her. Like, as soon as his wife died, you know, 7 years earlier, he started to ignore his daughter because she reminded him of his wife. And it's like, look, I'm sorry that you lost your wife, but it doesn't mean that you can ignore your child because she reminds you of your dead wife. Get over it and be there for your kid, because they're going to grow up and they're not going to have a good relationship with you as the parent because you ignored them most of their life. So she really desperately wanted attention from her father. And so he decides to take her to the department store, and she befriends Grace. And Grace definitely helped with that relationship. With the father and daughter relationship, it was a good thing that Grace had came into their lives, because that child was so desperate for somebody to, you know, love her and pay attention to the child. So Grace definitely brought a lot of like joy into, you know, that relationship. And you could see how, you know, Grace, you know, she treated the little girl really well. I did like it. I did like this story. It was a cute Christmas story. And Grace, you know, definitely needed to be in their lives, because I think if she would have never, you know, got together with him, that child would have been neglected. You know, it's sad. You know, neglect comes in many different ways. You can neglect your children by not feeding them properly, by not clothing them properly. But there also is people out there in the world where the child has the best of clothes, the child's fed really well, the child gets the best education, but the parents are not active in the children's lives. And that's basically what it was for this man. The kid had everything that she could have ever needed, but what she really needed was her father's attention. And it's like, you can provide all these things to your child, but when they want attention, when they want you to be present in their life, that's the most important. You know, besides dolls and all this other materialistic things, being present matters the most. So for him, he definitely lacked that. And Grace was kind of like the one that kind of like kicked him in the butt, like, hey, your daughter is wanting your attention. So I think for her, like telling him, get your head out of your butt, you know, and pay attention to your kid, it definitely helped for sure. So the next book I ended up reading, I enjoy this author's work. I love her writing. But the one thing about this author that she does is she makes me cry reading her books because they're so extremely emotional. This is probably got to be the saddest book I've ever read from this author. So I ended up reading Behind the Bars by Brittainy C. Cherry. And so we have the characters of Elliot and Jasmine. So the spice rating, I give this like a 2 out of 5. Most of it was just so sad. It was so sad. I was crying throughout most of this book. So I said we have the content warning for, I had said this book will rip your heart out, stomp on it, give it back to you in a paper bag, you know, and then tell you, there you go, you know. It was so emotional that I just, you know, I was kind of skimming a little bit of the beginning part because it was so heart-wrenching, what the character of Elliot had went through. And it was just, oh, I was so like mad reading it, but also tearing up and crying. So I said there is extreme bullying in this book. At the first 50% of this book was them, the characters of Elliot and Jasmine as teens in high school. And he was extremely bullied. And it just, to me, it got to me because I wasn't extremely bullied, but I definitely was bullied in elementary school, middle school, and a bit of junior high. And then when I moved to another town across the way, I definitely had a better experience. But he was extremely bullied. And it was just, I wanted to jump through the screen and, you know, pound the crap out of the bully, because that bully was just a piece of horse dookie. So there's that. There's attempted sexual assault on 2 different characters in this book. And then there's also extreme grief and emotional trauma. Also, I felt like there was definitely parental and emotional abuse. So for me, we spend half of this book with where Jasmine is getting emotionally abused by her mother. So I said the only light she had at the end of that shitty tunnel was her stepfather. I said that man was the best thing that her mother did for Jasmine. Ray, her stepfather, which technically they weren't married, but that's still her stepfather. And she thought of him as a father because he was there for her ever since she was a toddler. He was just so great with her. And I was just like, the mother just needs to give up on her daughter and just go live her life. Because Jasmine's mother wanted to live vicariously through her daughter. And I actually know a parent currently like this, that I want to smack in the face, because just because things didn't work out for you as the parent doesn't mean that you have to drag your children to be something that they don't want to be. And that's basically what this mother was doing, is pushing her daughter to be either a singer or a ballet dancer or something, you know, in the entertainment industry. Wanted her daughter to be a pop star and things like that. And she didn't want to do pop. She liked soul. She liked to sing soul. And so her mother was like, oh, well, you're not going to go anywhere with that, you know, and basically saying how, you know, the stepfather there, oh, he wasn't going anywhere with his career, but you went and survived by this man for years and you were using him? Piece of crap, mother. Piece of crap. I could not stand that woman. I wanted to go through the book so badly and smack her upside her head because I could not stand the woman. And I was kind of like, Jasmine, get away from this woman. She is such a terrible person. And Ray, with the stepfather, was so great with her. He was such a good man. And so Jasmine meets Elliot. Elliot he plays the saxophone, but he has an extreme stutter. You know, he stutters constantly. He is kind of like geeky looking, is really skinny, and he wears glasses and he has braces. I mean, that's typical kind of teenage wear. You know, when you're a teenager, you make it look kind of dorky, and then you glow up as you get older. So that's basically what happened with him. And there is a sibling death in this book. So that's one thing you have to be wary on, is that there is a sibling that dies in this book, and it's heartbreaking. And so we also have a 6-year separation. And if you're not into that type of thing, you might want to bypass this book. So we have these characters that are both in a situation where he's getting bullied. She sees that he's getting bullied. So she tries to help him. Unfortunately, she does things that I would be like, girl, don't do it. Don't do it, because it's not going to help him. In the end, it's not going to help him. So they come together and they become friends, and then they start to develop, you know, feelings for each other. And it was so sad because they had such a connection with each other. And then something happens, and she ends up moving to London with her mother, because her mother wants to get her into, you know, music. And something happens with him, and he changes. And it's heartbreaking, because you could see, like, him, he had so much vitality and life and in him. He could have been so, he could have been a type of person where he was getting teased. He could have did something about it. And there are people who've done something about it to the fellow students. He could have been like that, but he chose not to. He was still very kind and a really good person. And after an incident that happened to him, he became hollow, where he had no heart, and he became very bitter. And she came back into his life, and it was like she brought like life back into him, you know, that the candle he had inside him was extinguished, and she lit the candle again. So very emotional book. I was just so sad reading this, and I felt so bad for both of these characters. I wanted to give them hugs, because they just went through a lot of turmoil and finding each other again. And it was a good book. I mean, Brittainy C. Cherry is a good author. She's a good writer, but her books are just so emotional. I don't always like reading them, because they're just so heartbreaking. So I'm hoping the other book, I do have another book that's on my Kindle. I'm hoping it's less sad than this one here. It was good, but it's extremely emotionally sad. And so yeah, I did like this one, but like I said, just extremely sad. It's not a book I would want to read again. I mean, honestly, no, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be a reread, because it's just so emotionally sad. And it was like triggering for me, because seeing Jasmine being neglected in a way from her mother, and just being pushed to like, oh, you're going to be a star, and I'm going to reap the benefits of you being that star. Oh, I wanted to punch that parent. I really did. And seeing him getting teased 50% of the book, it was just his constant being teased. And I just felt like the author could have been like, you could have cut it in half, and maybe only had 20 or 30% of the story being that, because it was like 50% in, and I'm like, oh my God, when are we going to go to them being adults? Because I don't know how much longer I can handle this torment, you know? So it was really just, I gave it 4 for the writing, but the emotional toll, it was just too much for me. So the last book I've read so far is Evil Twin by Kati Wilde. This one, it took me a while to kind of get to. I was going to read it in, I think, October or November, and I just put it off and stayed on my Goodreads, like, currently reading list for a while, and I finally got into it. So we have Echo and Bane. So we have 4. I gave it 4 chili peppers out of 5. This is a fantasy world. We have dual virgins, so both of the characters are virgins. So we have Bane. I want to say Twain. It's not Twain. Bane. Bane is a twin brother. His brother is in line to the throne, and he's engaged to a woman of, she's a different kingdom. So Bane and his brother look so much alike that Bane decides he wants to seduce his brother's bride-to-be. So then he could take over the kingdom, because he knows his brother's a complete moron and has had everything handed to him. And he knows that if he becomes king, that he's going to end up messing up the kingdom. So Bane figures if he seduces the wife-to-be, they can form an alliance with each other, and then he could be king. So one night, Bane meets with the bride-to-be. He seduces her, and her family catches them in the, act of sexual relations. So I said, but what Bane didn't realize is that he seduced the bride-to-be's twin sister, Echo. And so I said, Echo is the evil twin. I said she was born under a certain sun or something, so the parents are all like superstitious. And so they neglected this girl. So Echo was definitely neglected by her parents. Her parents were really crappy people. And so they kind of neglected her because she was born under a certain sun or whatever it was. So she was like, cursed or whatever. Weird fantasy world stuff. I don't know. And so she decides she wants to kind of like have her own kingdom. So she deceived Bane in the attempt that he would, sleep with her, and then she can go and take over a kingdom. So it's basically their story. So Bane decides to do the right thing and, marry her, especially because he had his baby gravy in her. So, there's a possibility of her being pregnant. So there was that too. But I'd say it was really kind of a bonkers plot, but I enjoyed the characters more. I enjoyed like their story. So, they basically like getting to know each other and having, miscommunication a bit, because she was thinking, he's in love with her sister. He wasn't. So it was kind of like, their story. It was good. I liked it, but the plot was a bit bonkers, kind of out there. I kind of get confused when it comes to like fantasy type books, especially with like, sorcery and wizards and all this different stuff. And he has like some type of like affliction where these type of beasts or whatever they are had ended up scratching him. And so he has this like uncontrollable rage or like urge to like destroy things. And then like it makes him all like, you mine kind of thing, where he kind of almost turns like caveman-ish, where he's like, I want you to love me kind of thing. And he has to like control his rage and his urges type of thing. So it was an interesting book. I did give it 4 stars because I thought it was a very interesting book, interesting story. But the plot line was a bit bonkers for me. I didn't really understand the whole like, trying to take over the kingdoms and all that stuff, and different things like that. It was interesting, for sure. But I said I liked the character. I liked the character development, and, them like kind of like being, both of them were like mistreated and all that stuff. So it was basically like them, finding themselves and them having, a romance and all that. It was interesting. It was a very interesting, story. So yeah, that's what I've read so far. And I'm currently reading a, what is it again? A sports romance? I won't say what it is, but I'm reading a sports romance. I'm hoping that I like it and I get through it and it's not another DNF. I do want to go and do a video where I'm talking about all of my DNFs that I had for this year. I don't think I'm going to mention all of them because I've had a good number of books that I DNF'd. One I'm actually going to attempt to read again. I'm going to try to read it again. I usually don't go back to my DNFs, but this time I'm going to try to read my DNFs, or at least one of them. So I think I have about 40 some or so DNFs that I've done this year. So I really want to do a video soon. Maybe Wednesday I'll do it. Of all of the books I DNF'd this year, but not all of them because it would be too long of a video. So I think maybe I'll just choose the ones that maybe people would recognize, you know, the by either the author or the book title, you know, that type of thing. People will probably recognize those types of books, where some of the other ones, I don't know if they'll recognize them. So, but yeah, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. Be safe out there. And I will see you all on the next video. All right. Bye.